Good evening, everybody. This is Emmanuel Mason, your host to Exposital Vomit. Tonight, I am gonna read a portion of the short story that I started writing, and then what I'm gonna do is, since I was like unable to finish it in like the time frame because of a mixture between lack of inspiration and writer's block. Um I'm gonna read the portion that I have, and then I'm gonna wing it for the rest of the time, or for the rest of the story, or pretty much write the story as I'm sitting here. But quick recap to things that I've just been thinking about slash doing research on for the sake of like my writing and whatnot. Um, I've been trying to get into the more science fictiony mood to like write more science fiction related things, particularly on the world building side for both the Sephiroth and just for like other short stories that I had ideas for, or just stories in general that I had ideas for that are science fiction heavy. But my hyperfixation was particularly, or rather, the things that I was interested in at the time was mostly fantasy related things, and it took me a while to kind of get back into the swing of like science fiction. Like I dabbled a little bit in like Star Wars stuff for a while, but it was never really anything where it was like any sort of hard science fiction. Uh what did end up getting me back into the swing of things though is I got back into playing Armored Core 6 by the game company From Software, which is a pretty hard science fiction game series where like you uh, are a operator of a giant uh, mech that called an armored core, and you're on a planet called Rubicon to harvest this energy source called coral that humanity has discovered in like different planets, uh, which is pretty cool. Um, uh, Kind of looking. I got into. Dang, what am I trying to say? Man, ADHD sucks, guys. Um, I also started watching like whatever like science fiction stuff I could slash listening to stuff. I actually watched Arrival last night. The If you don't know what the movie's about, it's a science fiction film with the woman that recently played Lois Lane in the Snyder DC movies, and um, the guy that plays Hawkeye in Marvel, in the last couple of Marvel movies, uh, and the guy that played what's his name, Saul Guerrera in pretty much all of the last several Star Wars films and games. Um, and pretty much the premise of that movie was the main character, Louise, who's played by Lois Lane character. Um, Ironic, her name's Louise. Anyways, um, she is a language expert, and uh, aliens invade Earth. Well, they don't invade. There are 12 like curved pill shaped ships that are about the size of the Eiffel Tower that just appear in Earth's atmosphere, hovering a couple feet above the ground in 12 different locations. And she essentially is hired by the government to communicate, to find a way to communicate with these aliens. And the cool thing about this movie is it gives you an idea of how much different um, an alien species would likely be if they existed in a in a uh, in a general secular worldview, I would say. But also, if you're someone who believes in like aliens, even as like a non as a person with a non-secular worldview, I think that there would still be a level of like usness that these aliens would have. Um, but anyways, I kind of went on a little mild tangent, but the exploration of how language functions was very interesting because the government, for some reason, like they pretty much had the government play the dumb character in quotes, um, to allow a reason for there to be an explanation given to the audience that because otherwise if everybody understood the reasoning as to why she was doing whatever she was doing, then we wouldn't get an explanation. But pretty much the it explored the uh nuances of how language functions, such as when she was getting ready to, or after her first instance, trying to converse with the aliens. I forget what they're called. I think they were called aliopods or something, because they were very squid arthropod like almost. But she thought not thought, goodness, ADHD. Um, she put together a an analogy, not an analogy. Oh my goodness, I'm terrible at explaining this stuff. So in order for them to have a basis for communication, there had to be a certain level of common ground made. Uh, for example, she made the point that in order for us to frame a question to them, they have to make sure that they know what a question is. Then they have to learn how to communicate uh, from one to the other based off of how how their culture would understand it. Um, can you tell that I'm like really trying to just uh, pull this memory out and I just can't? Um, an explanation that a good example of what I'm trying to explain is in Mass Effect, a video game, science fiction video game series. There's um, an alien race that like acts as like merchants and stuff, and they always refer to themselves in the third person because their culture um, doesn't doesn't believe in be in how would you say it? uh Not individualism, but like they're very anti pride, so they refer to themselves in the third person, so they'll always be like this one or this entity rather than saying I, me, or my. uh and she was pretty much telling the government, hey, we have to like do so much uh to create common ground in order to be able to properly communicate with these creatures, because the creatures language was audible, uh but it was like a series of sounds that were partially imperceptible and just on a far more complex wavelength than ours, because it was just a prolonged sound, and that's how they would talk. I'm not explaining that well, but I thought that was really interesting. um but to digress, I am gonna I'm gonna read the little paragraph of the story that I have. The premise is like it's a future of humanity where like we've colonized like a bunch of planets and I've gone pretty much past the solar system and have found a way to move at greater than light speeds. And the main character, I'm still kind of developing. I went back and forth from them, not really back and forth that much, but I went back and forth between the main character being like either a mechanic or a mercenary, and I settled on a like more mechanic slash technician type character so that I have a means of a reason for the character to have a deeper understanding of the technology than like so that I can explain it to the readers. And I what I wanted was a certain level of existential like fear into it. Like I wanted to pretty much write a science fiction like little horror story. Um I don't know what I want to do with that yet, whether or not I want it to be like aliens or just raw space stuff, or if I want to do it and go in on the route of an abridged an abridged revelation instance where like a rapture type thing happens, or God decides to just do his thing and come back towards the end, and how that would look if we had colonized a bunch of planets. But here it is right here. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest fear is fear itself. H.P. Lovecraft. I got off the linear space tram at around 300 based on Earth's Eastern Standard Time, looking around at the chromatic metals of the station. I always thought it was funny that these stations looked a lot like train stations, at least in general structure, to the planets proper train stations. I walked through the station to the hallway that, wow, when I was writing this, I was kind of just putting things down and I'm looking at it. I'm like, this reads horribly, but I walked through the station to the hallway that led to a hallway that led to the trains that led to the terradomes, the cities that are small pockets of terraformed sections of the planet. Ugh, hate the way this is written. As I walked, I heard an automated announcement via the many digital billboards. Welcome to Europa. Please ensure proper clothing is worn when you exit the station, and or personal heat system is on stand. Wow, or that your personal heat system is on standby. So I'm gonna be reading this and just kind of making corrections throughout, and then when I get to the end, which I'm already halfway through, I'll I'll wing it and I'll pretty much write the story with you guys. Like anyone has one, I said to myself. He's referring to the personal heat systems. So what I wanted for this particular story is I wanted to not apply. I wanted the advancement to be, the technological advancement to be so far in the future that we're able to put technology onto / into our bodies. And one would be a greater, or, because now I'm processing through it. I think a personal heating system, because I'm thinking about it like logically, in order for you to be able to be like warmed and it not like kill you, it would have to be something either very minute that's external, or something kind of very, very complicated if it's internal, because it would have to extend throughout the heat would have to somehow extend throughout the entire body. And the reason I thought of this was because Europa, the planetoid that this starts off on, is a moon of Jupiter, and its average temperature is negative 360 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's 350 degrees Fahrenheit anywhere but the equator, and then at the equator it's around negative 216 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's accurate. It's somewhere in those 200 and 300 ranges. But because the Europa is less advanced, or rather because Europa was one of the earlier settlements, they lack the technological advancement that was made by the time humanity got further out into the solar system, into other systems. And I'm gonna continue. Did not want to do that. Europa, being one of the older colonies, lacked, okay, pretty much what I just explained. So Europa, being one of the older colonies, lacked the full settlement treatment that changed the majority of its atmosphere to fit better living conditions, as we liked the technology at the time. Uh, so the where I wanted this to kind of start to go by the time I finished writing that portion was I wanted the character to kind of explore around one of the domes, um, and allow for an explanation of some of the where like Earth or humanity was at technologically and where they were at relationally between each other. Um, I thought of Europa's domed cities to be the terradomes, as I called them, to be slightly less advanced, kind of like how you would see in um, you would see in the real world where a lot of like older areas uh don't or areas that were settled a lot earlier tend to not have as much technological advancement in the core or advanced technology in the core of their like systems. So if you think of like the majority of the East Coast, everything a lot of stuff that you see on the East Coast was stuff that was already built by like 1800 or and then when you get to like when you go further to the West Coast, a lot of their stuff is lot more modernized because their settlements uh, are a lot newer, so they were able to take advantage of more recent architectural advancement. You see this kind of sort of in Japan because of how late Japan had its industrial revolution. Hence, like their how ingrained more slightly more advanced or technology slash just generally more modern technology is ingrained into the um, common workings of their society. They're like how like most of their a lot of their vending machines are touchscreen. They have a lot more technology ingrained into their train stations, their poppy stores, corner stores. What are they called? Convenience stores. There we go. Um, and their even their toilets. I mean that the famous bidet, the thing that uh, I won't continue that statement. Um, um, but I wanted there to be a cultural disconnect between like a lot of the earlier colonies and colonies that are farther out. Because humanity like because humanity, wow. I'm like reprocessing it and not reprocessing it, but I'm going further down the line mentally, and I kind of want Earth to be like Coruscant in Star Wars. And I know I'm going all over the place, but this is exposital vomit, so you're gonna get whatever. Um, to be like Coruscant, where it's a lot of just layers of cities built on top of one another. I don't know if I explained this in one of my last shows, but Coruscant in Star Wars, the main like city planet, um, is a like the main planet that you see the Jedi Council on, and all of those like council meetings that you see in like the main trilogy. That's pretty much that's the planet I'm talking about. But the way Coruscant functions is it's a city planet that has several layers to it. So like the upper layers are more or less the richer areas because there's because the buildings are so tall that it reaches the supposed upper atmosphere of the planet, and the further down you go per layer, the less wealthy and the more dirty everything is, because there was so much done industrially that they made like the surface like this. There's like the surface of the planet like is unlivable, except by like these mutants that are extremely dangerous, and it doesn't help that they throw their trash um like pretty much down into like the depths pretty much. And I kind of wanted Earth to be like that, where Earth was just a hot spot for politicians and on like the top end, and then a hot spot for the criminal underworld and the literal underworld. Um, and then have like others kind of spread out throughout the wider galaxy. Now I don't know how far reaching I want humanity to be when it comes to their efforts of colonization. Uh, I think I might write it in a way where I was thinking that humanity was on a similar scope of Cowboy Bebop, where they have faster than light travel, but it's a little bit more limited, where you would have to go through rings or something, or there you have to like plug yourself up to a machine to allow for the smaller ships to move through space at uh for farther distances. I don't know how I want long distance travel to work. I might do it something to like akin to Halo, Star Wars, and Warhammer 40K, where there's a parallel dimension that people go into and come out of because uh, where time doesn't flow exactly the same. Um, on the note of like things that like I got back I got back into for like inspiration for like just doing science fiction stuff um was Monster Hunter. Uh because Monster Hunter is more because of the way it handles its world, which Monster Hunter is a fictional megafauna hunting video game where you hunt like giant dragon-like animals, giant dragon-like lizards, giant spiders, giant bears that can shoot lightning at you. It's like it's on the front end, like without like knowing much about it, you would look like it's fantasy, but it's not because magic doesn't exist. It's just uh what I would say soft science fiction, where like everything that all of the monsters, like the famous Rathalos, breathes fire because it has an organ called a flame sac that allows it to spit fire. Then you have the Zenogre, which has a colony of these bugs that hold electrical charges, and they use the Zenogre, which is like a giant like wolf dinosaur thing. So it's like a furry, scaly. Think if a wolf had was turned into Doomsday from DC Comics, and you got pretty much as an ogre, um, and the these flies that fly around the Zenogre that like pretty much colonize toward it, hold electrical charges and allow the Zenogre to use their electrical charges as weapons, and like sort of a symbiotic relationship sort of thing. Um, Something I've been thinking of uh, writing or desiring to write is something more akin to Armored Core's science fiction, because I really like the fact that there's pretty much no aliens. There's straight up no aliens in Armored Core except for one, and you figure out pretty early on in Armored Core 6, also kind of sort of spoilers if you care, but you find out relatively early on or halfway through the game that the coral, the energy source, which is uh what like everyone is striving for, each individual like spark of coral is a sentient being. And you actually find this out via a coral being attaching itself to you, or rather being able to communicate with you um, in as you like the story progresses, and they kind of help you with the almost vague moral decisions that you make throughout the game, that will change which bosses you end up fighting. Um, but the vibe that Armored Core has is it's a very not gritty. It has a very believable um future for humanity where humanity's just gone throughout the stars and now corporations are looking for planets that they can profit off of, whether it's via the resources on those planets or the location of those planets allowing for easy distribution of resources. Um, because I think that if we were to spread throughout space, the nature of corporations would have to change, or at least not the nature, but the methods that corporations uh, take to maintain a certain level of profit would either change. Either there would be more corporations, or there would be or the corporations that we have now would have to be significantly longer. Um, I think, it's like I'm really thinking about it like now, but I feel like based off of where we're going on with when it comes to our like large companies, seeing how like a lot of like companies are being bought out by bigger ones like Pixar being bought by Disney, Marvel being bought by Disney, um, and Fox being bought by Disney. Like pretty much everyone is like selling themselves to like the bigger guys, and really the only difference between one or the other, it like pretty much the difference between the subsidiary and uh uh the proverbial genus is is method, because you know a Pixar movie when you see it, as akin to like more of a Disney movie, because of how Pixar tells their stories in relation to how the Disney proper writes its stories. But to digress that back to how I would feel a realistic science fiction type future would go, I think that we would see a lot more of that, and it's interesting because I think that in order for there to be like an easy trans solar system business model, every single corporation would have to pretty much start its own space program, unless there's one space program and then everyone, one or two maybe, um, because of course, like there's not every space program is created equal, so that hence why I say like one or two, probably like one on our side and one in Asia, uh, if there's two at all, but the and of course there's also the time required to get infrastructure started for a space program, because Disney, like if Disney were to start a space program, they would have to change around their assets, because if I'm understanding what makes Disney um rich is a mix between its assets and its raw revenue, which has been going down for a while just due to the nature of media as of late. Um, but I feel like a company like Disney or something starting to go into pretty much space exploration or just space travel, um, it would take both a long time, an unnecessarily long time, and they might end up being, but I feel like they would probably be the quickest out of like the more non technology related companies. And I'm not an expert on like what company owns what. I probably should look more into that as like I continue to brainstorm things. But back to pertaining to the like the general vibe I would want to go for a story, like a science fiction story. Like I said, it would have to be. I would like it to be very Armored Core like, where it's not over designed, to where it has the same issue that a lot of high fantasy weapons and armor have, without like the Elf of Magic, where the weapons and armor are far too ornate to be mass produced in the amount that they are, because in order for something to be that ornate, like if you've ever watched people put in like those little intricate designs onto like metal, if you've ever watched someone if you've ever really watched someone make a sword, or even someone make a piece of armor, the amount of work you would have to go through to make a suit of armor be both functional and ornate is exceedingly time consuming. And I think a lot of times what some, not many though, but some science fiction visuals go a little too far on when they're trying to make their stuff really realistic, is kind of over designing their the visual, like the appearance of certain technologies. uh because I think especially for something like a giant mech, I think that you wouldn't waste a lot of time making a machine, except maybe a few, be very, very designed. So like having impractical but not necessarily disadvantageous add-ons to it, like maybe a engraving, like a just all encompassing engraving, like you would see on like Thai architecture, um or different like murals of some sort. But I think that's possible. um Otherwise, or I could just explain it away um with just saying, oh yeah, we're just so advanced that we can efficiently mass produce extremely ornate pieces of equipment. And the only reason that and pretty much just make it to where like there's a standardized or visual of ornate, what's the word, what would be the present tense of ornate, or yeah, or ornamentation, or an adjective that ornamentation. I'm gonna make up a word today. Ornamentation. Making the ornamentation. Yeah, making something ornate. Not an adjective. That'd be a verb. Be standardized. So like there's a factory that does, or a factory or factories that does one design, and that one design has been made extremely like the methods of making that design has become very efficient. Which is how I assume it works in something like Warhammer 40K. Um, yeah, I went from saying I was gonna wing that short story to kind of expositing some desired inspiration or thought processes. Well, all of these monitors in front of me have different times on them. I'm realizing. Um, what else? Something I really enjoy in science fiction is um it is, and this is gonna sound like obvious, but the technological aspect, because one of my um one of the things I was really interested in when I was a kid was just like technology as a whole. I really liked understanding what made things work, and at the same time, I really liked like biology and things like that, which is why I also liked certain, which I guess had which which I guess turned into my desire for, not my desire, but my enjoyment of speculative fiction. If you've ever read The Tomorrows by, I can't remember what it's by, but it's a speculative. The Tomorrows is a speculative fiction art book. I think it's an art book where it's pretty much several thousand years of human future history as we go throughout the stars, and how humanity would theoretically evolve under like certain conditions. Now, um, personally, I don't believe in macro evolution, but I find the application of it in wider science fiction stories to be very interesting. Um, uh, because then that allows for um, hmm, long story short, I just find it interesting. I lost my train of thought, but because then I started thinking about some visuals that I remember. There's also a show on Netflix, and I can't remember what it's called, but it pretty much takes the planets that we know are Earth-like in our galaxy, and speculates on the life there um based off of the weather conditions and whatnot on that planet. Um, I like noticed over the past like year and a half that I really really like stuff like that. Um, I simultaneously want to do a story that's akin to both Armored Core and Cyberpunk. Hence, like my thought on like implants and stuff. But I don't know how far I want to go on like the how possible and how advanced implants would be, because with Cyberpunk, it's like almost like you have like high, almost like mid you have like mid-tier superpowers with with implants in Cyberpunk. But with Armored Core, it's like you get implants, or rather you're augmented, but you're augmented in order for a particular function. And normally people who are augmented, it's not something you want to have happen to you. In Armored Core, in Armored Core 6, you play as augmented human 621, and pretty much everyone who's an augmented human, that is pretty much everyone that's an augmented human is augmented due to some misfortune of sorts, like they lost in a series of bets, or this is like their last chance to like get like money or something. But most augmented humans are augmented for the operation, or the more efficient operation of Armored Core units, which are the mechs that are piloted in that universe. Um, and I think the required extremity or extremeness. I'm gonna say extremity, but the required extremity of augments to increase processing power, I think, would teeter slash, not even teeter, would just straight up be just transhumanistic. Um, hmm, which I might explore from a biblical standpoint. I think I might want to. So I think the story that I'm writing, the little short story that I'm writing right now, I'll do like some research on like the nature of body alteration, or the nature of, or not the nature, the biblical viewpoint of body alteration in the Bible, and how it could affect one's belief when humanity can change so much. If humanity can change so much. Um, there's a interesting book series called the I want to say Firelight series. The first book is Blind Sight, and the premise of that is humanity has reached a point in its future where we are able to essentially entirely replace half of people's brains and them still be functionally alive. Actually, the main character is one of these people, and the something that it touches on a little bit, but doesn't explore too much, is how that would affect certain religious groups. Now, of course, the writer is not a it's not the religious type. I'm pretty sure he's an atheist. Peter Watts being the writer. Um, so his viewpoint on the his viewpoint on religious people's possible viewpoint of extreme um alterations to the human form is of course not sullied, but you can tell his prejudice toward his prejudices relating to religious thought. Um, but I thought that because the reasoning I say that is because a lot of particularly like Judeo-Christian people started to become against the alterations that could be done to a person technologically. Um, to give you like another metric of how advanced humanity has become in this time period of humanity, there in this version of our universe, there was a subspecies of humans that functionally became vampires. Um, they I have to reread a portion of the chapter to understand the science behind the reasoning as to why they drink blood. But their body didn't produce a particular enzyme in their body, or their brain didn't produce a particular type of enzyme, and due to this, they started preying on humans, and as they were preying on humans, it changed their psychology and their biology simultaneously over a period of thousands of years and made them stronger, faster, significantly more intelligent, um, made their senses wildly greater. And the only reason that humanity thought that these beings were myths is due to the advancement in their processing power. Their brains can't fully they're not can't but their brains short circuit when there's a series of right angles in their vision, due to some glitch in their perception, because it's implied, as later on, as humanity because humanity brings back uh brings some of these vampires back to life, but it's implied that they're they're due to them being highly intelligent, or rather due to their greater perception, it allows them to be more intelligent. However, for some reason their brains can't uh uh pretty much have epileptic symptoms when they see a series of right angles. That's why they call it the crucifix glitch. And because pretty much most civilizations' doors are just a series of four right angles, most of the vampires went extinct. Um, and the way that they were able to live for so long is they were able to put their bodies into a hibernation like state, but it's almost fully stopped their metabolic uh, processes. So they would stop. They pretty much stop consuming energy completely, and then they could wake up like 1,000 years later. And the reason they evolved slash adapted to do this was because they evolved. Oh, excuse me. Their numbers was were at the time that they evolved was barely more than us, and due to this, they had to adapt to have a way to not overeat from um from their numbers being equal to us. So they found a way to um not found a way, but their bodies learned how they wow their bodies. Goodness. Long story short, they're able to go into sleep, and hence why the myths of vampires sleeping in coffins and whatnot. Um, Something akin to that, like that level of speculative evolution. I really enjoy. That's not why I was saying that, but it is what it is. Um, I'll probably also uh, there's probably Armored Core gameplay in the background of this. Um, so I probably didn't need to explain as much as I did when it came to Armored Core. But back to talking about the what I'm trying to write, or my inspiration for what I was trying to write. I think the level of scientific detail that Peter Watts goes into in his book series is the type of, or rather the general vibe that he has. No, okay, that's what I was talking about. I was talking about transhumanism. Okay, I I do want to explore that concept from a Christian worldview, because I think that um I don't think it's looking like we will be able to have certain augments in the future, especially with the chip that Elon Musk is working on. And pretty much if he's able to work out the kinks of the chip, because from what I remember recently, or not even recently, from what I looked at a while ago, the for a reason I can't remember, the animal subjects that they used were um pretty much died soon after implementation was uh soon after they were their chips were implanted. But I think that's gonna be a thing that we as believers are gonna have to start thinking about. Um, Especially with when it pertains to our um, especially when it pertains to people using them, something like the chip, to better utilize um, their prosthetic limbs, as our prosthetic limbs already to I don't know what extent respond to neurological activity, but it's directly from the nerve of the stump to the machine. Um, I think that mm, in exploration of transhumanistic thought, akin to something like, if you've ever played the game Soma, would be interesting. But essentially, in to kind of sort of spoilers for the general, like the overarching premise of Soma. So uh, hmm, since this is the end, I'm not gonna talk for too much longer. Since this is close to the end, I'm not gonna talk for too much longer. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the game Soma's primary fear concept, what I believe is his primary fear concept, I would say stop listening now. Slash, if you're listening on YouTube, go to the timestamp that I may or may not put up, depending on how lazy I am. Actually, it'll be up because I'm not even editing the audio at all. I'll just have to finagle the editing software that I decided to use. Um, but the general premise of Soma is humanity learned how to copy the consciousness of individuals and pretty much control C your entire psychology and memories in control V into like a machine. And one of the, or just the primary premise is whether or not, a mixture between whether or not these things are human and also an exploration of the loss of real humanity, as humanity is hit by a meteor and the only surviving humans live in a series of science stations in, I believe, the Atlantic Ocean. And you're trying to launch a shuttle to a space station to pretty much send all of humanity's, like all of the remaining consciousnesses or the copies of consciousnesses of humanity to a satellite to pretty much live in a digital heaven. It is established quite early on that the pace that the people that get their brains scanned do not experience continuity. So you'll get your brain scanned, and then the version of you that you were when you got your brain scan is the behaviors and the psychology and the memories that the whatever machine or robot gets your brain scan, and you pretty much just are able to go throughout your daily life normally, but you won't be literally transferred. So like transference is not possible. And then there's one more game that I think that inspired that is transhumanism inspired, and that's System Shock, where humanity is has like pretty much corporations own everything, including countries. That wasn't really relevant, but I thought that was interesting. An interesting sociological aspect. Humans are so technologically advanced that we have literal injections and patches that we can put on to increase our strength, our perception, make us faster, kind of like the plasmids in BioShock, which also you could argue is very transhumanistic. I probably should also explain transhumanism. Transhumanism, let me actually, considering the way I've been articulating myself over the past hour, I should probably look up a genuine definition. Transhumanism is a philosophical and scientific movement that uses technology to improve the human condition. Transhumanists believe that humans can use technology to enhance their cognitive, physical, and psychological abilities and to overcome aging, disease, and death. The goal is to create a post-human species that transcends humanity. Now, what that definition didn't state was also the fact that transhumanists also believe we may also be able to do it biologically. So excuse me. The definition made it seem like we like only add like machinery to ourselves, but there's also a sect of transhumanists that believe we can just change the meat, not just replace the meat, as it were, and allow us to pretty much become. I feel like there's a good analog for this. kind of like if you've ever seen that one episode of Batman Beyond, where the splicers episodes where people a surgery slash operation was invented to where you can give yourself animalistic traits and you would become like however strong, however fast, or whatever as that animal. It was pretty much like the lizard serum that Dr. Connors from Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man, did, where he was trying to uh, regrow his left arm that he lost by by pretty much splicing human DNA with um, lizard DNA. Um, but anyways, that was a lot of rambling on my part. I didn't fully do what I sought to do. But I'm actually kind of glad I had this external thought process. Um, Cause for like one reason or another, sitting here for the radio show slash podcast or whatever the shock you want to call it, um, uh, it forces me to put myself in a decent mindset slash forces me to think through some of my ideas, uh, and it kind of gives me a reason to structure my thought processes more, because a lot of times my ideas um stay in my head as vague concepts and visuals, which is also why I'm gonna try to, on either my main Instagram account or the Exposital vomit account on Instagram. I think I said Instagram twice. Ugh, how embarrassing. um Start like posting like art that I do, because I really need to like start practicing, because I've been feeling led to like continue doing that. I just haven't, because of like a mixture between not even a mix, just straight up the feeling of like I'm not good, because like I used to be really good at drawing when I was a lot younger, but due to some health like issues didn't know that I didn't know of at the time, and different like emotional things and hyperfixations, I just stopped drawing. And so now I'm like, I still have the ability to draw, but I'm so incredibly inconsistent. Like if you look on my my main Instagram, my Mansu Alpha, I you can see like the drawings I posted. Um, those are like the only ones that I consider uh at like the skill level that I technically am at. Like I can really only do though head, shoulders up, because I have to relearn like body, because I had just started getting into like how to do like bodies, arms, and hands, and I can do a little bit of hands. I think I posted a hands thing I did a couple months ago on Instagram. I don't know if I did, but hopefully I can get back into that and like make the ideas that I'm having in my head less vague, vague like thought process, and more um, tangible, which is what this podcast is for. Podcast or whatever the shock you want to call it. But yeah. I have like literally a minute left. Thank you guys for listening. Um, I'll see if I can write more of the short story for next week, and what do I want to do for next week? Um, I might start incorporating um little, not little, but um incorporating the writing advice that I've been like writing advice, more the research on methods to writing and world building that I'm getting, so that I can also have a secondary-ish thing to kind of talk about, other than my hyperfixations at the time and the little, if at all, writing that I did over the course of the 1 week. The 1 week. Goodness, Manny. Anyways, this has been cool. Uh, Adios.